Bismillah, assalamu alaikum. So in this one we are gonna try to make the program work. So this is the part where we want to have some code in our main.py. So let's check our main.py and what we have inside. So actually it should be empty by now, and we are not gonna use the Vim editor for this one. We are gonna use the Sublime editor. Okay, we should actually exit from the root user actually, I think, and I should exit in here too from this Sublime and have the main.py Sublime. Okay, so let's move to profiling program and have Sublime open main.py. Here I'm gonna need to have the text a little more bigger, and I need to import some. I need to start now, so I need to import some libraries. So PyQt5, from PyQt5 UIC, I'm gonna import load UI, so I do not need to change the UI each and every time to a.py just to execute it. So anytime, that's actually a good method if you do not want to change or to converting your file to a.py every time you change something in your graphical user interface or the .ui file. So from PyQt5 import Qt core, import everything. So from PyQt5 dot Qt GUI import asterisk, that means everything, and import MySQL connector. This is the one that we are going to use to connect to the database as MDB, and import the sys module. Next thing, I need to have some variables to unpack some values. So I will need to have a variable with the main UI name and this dunder here to have an empty variable that we actually don't need later. So load UI type, this is in my data, so I'm actually using the main.ui to show up the user interface for the user. And what I will need second is to have a class by the main name. So this is actually where the main window comes, which is the type of the application that we have. We actually specified that in the GUI video. So we're gonna define or start an instructor for this. So self parent will have the none value in this. So super main self dot dunder init parent, which is none. So q main window dunder init, we are gonna change this. So self, okay, so self set up UI. So we are done in this. Okay, I have a problem. I have created this as the administrator user, so I can't actually edit it. The things that we have done it with the root user, so we should keep using that user if we don't want to. Okay, if I try to, so I can't actually remove it until I go back to the same user. So so remove the main.py and let's go back. So I'm gonna attach main.py, permission denied. Okay, so let's just go back to the root user. and let's just use that. So attach main.py. So save this. Okay, got all of this. Close without saving, close this, and open this main.py with the root user, copy everything and save it, and let's just continue as the root user. So for us, in order for us to start the application, we will need a main function that does that for us. So just like the previous videos, we'll need a main function. We need to pass this, and we will need to have this f under name under main condition. So this is an if statement. This is a control flow. If you don't need what this line does, Google that out. This is your exercise for this course. You need to figure out what this line does and why we are using it. So actually some of this have to do with the modules, So in here we will need to create an app, an instance of our Q application that we have imported, and we are going to use the sys module RGV. In here we'll need to create an instance of our main app that we have created, so this class. And next up we need to show it, so window.show and app.execute to execute this. So if we went out, no module named SQL, and if we try it from this user, it will start the application. Okay, I actually thought he will not have the permissions to do so, so I have to repeat recording the video. That's a good one for me, so that's good luck. So here is what the program looks like. The user can give it some information, so let's give it Ahmed, last name is Isho, email something at gmail.com, for example, address Morocco something. Excuse me. So the next thing is the origin. So if we hit the submit button, this should be submitted to the database. Next thing, the database should show everything in it in this table, or the program should show everything in the database in this table, and we can just give it an ID or a social security number in here, search that, and it will fill up this information based on whether it's in the database or not. And if we either click in delete or update, it can update it or delete it, speaking about the profile. Okay, so let's go back to the user of the root user. Okay, and let's make some changes to this one. What we'll need first is to connect to our database or to our server. So we actually don't need to connect to the server if we actually already have the database. So that's exactly what I'm gonna do, is to connect, have a function to connect directly to the database. So let's call this connect to db. This will have a self, and this will need to pass. Next thing, I will need to have a function. So I'm just doing the prototype now. I will need a function that gets the data from the database. I need to give it a self because this is a class method. Next thing I will need to do is to have a handle function button that a handler function that handles our buttons for us. So button self, I need to pass this for the moment, and another one to search for the profile. So This one is gonna handle the buttons that we will have in our application. So if we actually click in here, nothing happens, and if we click in this delete or update or search, nothing happens. So we will need this function to handle that for us. So we will need to give it, for example, we have the button update, for example. This will need to be triggering some event or some action. So if this button was clicked, I connect it to a method, for example, and this method should be in our program. So let's call this update profile. So we didn't create this method in our program until the moment, but I just need to comment this now until I do. So let's create these methods for the buttons. So first of all, we need a submit button. So submit profile. So for each button I will have a function that button will trigger. So we have a submit profile for the submit button. We have a search profile for the search button. Okay, and I will have a delete profile for the delete button, and an update profile for the update button. So we have the submit profile. So let's go back. We have the submit, the search, the delete, and the update. So let's create each and every one of those. But first let's have us connecting to the database. So connect to DB should have a connection, a self.connection variable that has mdb connect. The host is localhost, the user is the root user, the password should be the TOOR, and the database should be YouTube tutorial. Okay, and they will have a cursor, so we don't need a global variable in this one because we have it in our method. So we are using the self, we are creating actually a global variable in this class. So let's have a cursor equal to self connection plus cursor. Okay, and what we need to do is to print the self.connection to check if we actually connected successfully to the database. So python main.py. Okay, it didn't actually execute, and it gave us a segmentation fault because we didn't actually call this in the constructor that we created for our main class. So we need to do that. So connect to DB in here, but we still need to have it the self connect to DB to be executed as soon as the program gets run get started. So let's go back. There we go, we have a connection. Next thing I need to do is to remove this. For the moment I don't need this anymore, and for me to get the data I need to have a query. Okay, so I need to have an SQL query that will store my query. So my query should be select first name. So in this get data, I'm getting the data to fill in the table that I have in my application. So let's show that again. This table should have all the data from the startup of the program. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. So for that I need to copy the name of this, have it in this after the connection to DB to get the data as far or as soon as the program gets started. So these functions will be both executed. So I will need the first name, the last name, the email, the home address, the origin, and the person ID, because this is the one that I told you that is gonna be replaced by the social security number, just in the table. So let's have a from profiles. Okay, so this should be executed. So self cursor execute SQL. I will have a result variable that will have self cursor fetch all. This now has all the data that's been returned using this fetch all. So self table widget, we are manipulating the table widget now. So self set row, we are just resetting the settings of resetting the table. So I will do this loop that will loop through our data. So row number, row data in enumerate of my result, I will have the row of the table. So self table widget insert row, so I will just give it the row number at this point. Next I will have another loop in this one. So column for column number data in my enumerate row. So in my enumerate row data that we loop through, we need a self dot table widget to set the item of our row number that we have set before, and the column number to queue table widget item. This should be the string of that data, and this is actually all we need to get the data for our application. So let's do that. Let's try and see if that's been. So row number is not defined. Let's look this up. Okay, save, go back, execute this, and there we go. We have everything we need. But since this doesn't show, this actually is not stretched. These columns are not stretched in our table. So let's just do that. Let's have a change UI. Okay, so let's have a change UI function. I will need it just below the constructor method. So I will need first of all to name it. So change UI. Okay, so self, and I need to call it in here to be executed as soon as the program executes. So change UI before connecting to the database. Okay, the change UI should have a header variable that will have a self table widget value to horizontal header. Okay, have a horizontal header in here. So the first one, so we have 6 values, or 5 values rather. So how many values we have? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. So header self. So header set section. Resize mode. The first one, queue header view, and this need to be stretch. Okay, the name is correct, and I need to copy this. So let's copy this 5 times. This should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. the sixth actually doesn't exist because we do have 6. So 1 2 3 4 5 6 6 values, but the start counting in programming starts from 0. Okay, let's do have this. Okay, so I think the table should be just good. So QHeader view has no attribute stretch. Okay, okay, we should have a T in here. So T, 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 and T. Okay, let's try this. Okay, everything is good. Everything is stretched. We have this. Okay, you can actually copy this from here if you want. Okay, so the next thing, so based on what we have done, we got the data in here, but we didn't have gotten the data from here and submitted to the database. So let's do that. So let's do have a submit profile. So submit profile will need some data in order to submit a profile to the database. So we will need the text in each and every field in our form. So the first name should be the first name, the self dot first name dot text. So this way we are accessing the text that is in this first name field or the first name edit that's in our application. So this one. Later on we are gonna do the first name 2, which means this one, first name 3, or last name 2, last email address 2, address 2, origin 2. Okay, so you got the point. So that means actually this one is the last name, email address, home address, origin. So and these ones are the second for each and every field. Let's go back. Let's go right here. So this is the second one is the last name. So the last name is equal to self last name text. Okay, the email address is the self email address, email address to text. Okay, the next one should be the home address, and the home address in here is equal to home address dot text. I think actually that's what I have called it in my Geo application. So self origin dot text. Let's just see if this goes through. So let's connect this method in here. So self button submit. If this was clicked, we want to connect it to this method. So submit profile, but this needs to have a self in here. Let's go back, execute this, submit. Okay, so it does actually exist. Go back. So let's create a query. So my query should be MySQL. Should be a MySQL queries. This is just a comment to what I'm gonna do next. So SQL, this is just a variable that will have my query as a string. So insert into profiles. So this is my table that I'm gonna insert the data to, that exists in my YouTube tutorial database. So the next thing that I'm gonna do is to specify the fields that I'm gonna give it. So I will need the first name, the last name, the email, and the home address, and do not forget the origin. So why am I not specifying the person ID? Because that is actually auto incrementing and is automatically being inserted by the database. So it's taken actually care for us by that for us. So values, we'll need a values in here. So values, we will specify this as formatting strings, so 5 values, and we'll need to have the data that's in here. So I will need the string of the first name, the string of the last name. I'm just making sure all of these are strings because that's the only thing that the database accepts. Okay, and let's make sure that the string of the email address goes through too. So email address, this is the string of the home address, and the string of the origin. Okay, that's good. Let's go back. So insert into profiles, first name, last name, email, home address, origin. This data and this SQL are the ones that should be executed. So self cursor execute SQL is the query that will be executed, and the data is the data that will replace. This is just a tuple that contains the data that will actually be replaced by this, that will replace this strings in here, or those values. So we need to self connection commit these changes to the database, so it will save that. And next thing I will need to do is to call this self get data in order for it to get the data or the latest data or the latest version of data that's in the database for every and each submit thing or submit profiling that does happen in our program. Okay, let's do that. Let's try executing this. So let's have, okay, Ahmed and Kamal. Let's have another one. Let's do Samir in this one. Let's have here okay, the email should be Samir, for example, at gmail.com. This will be Italy, for example. 44. Origin is Morocco. Let's have submitting this, and let's go back, and the profile is not here. So we do not actually, okay, I don't actually think if I did this right. Okay, so where is the error? This didn't give us any error and did not actually execute this. So let's go back. Okay, it's not there. So where is the error? So okay, we didn't call handle buttons in here. Okay, we didn't call it in here. So change UI, just below here we need to handle buttons. We need the name of this handle buttons function in order for it to be active. Let's go back. Let's have another profile. Okay, origin is Morocco, like we said. I'm gonna submit this and we are gonna find it in here. So this is the profile, the latest one or the latest one that's been added to the database, but we have a problem. The data is still in this field, so we want actually to clear the fields each and every time I do click the submit button. So each and every time I submit a profile, the data in here should be erased or deleted automatically. So there is actually nothing automatically if you didn't do it yourself, so we are just gonna do that in the code. So let's have a function that clears the data for us. So let's go back, just under the UI changes I'm gonna have a clear a clear fields function. So clear fields function that we have my fields. So what are the name of my fields? So these are the names. Let's go back in there, and instead of changing these, or instead of getting the text in here, I need to clear those, and I do not need to give them variables. So let's just say this. So this will clear these as soon as I hit the submit button, but I still need to call it in order to activate that. So submitting a profile, here we are getting the data again, or getting the latest data, and here cleaning or clearing the fields for a new profile if we do want to submit that. So self dot clear fields, it's been executing each and every time the submit profile does happen, or does it's being called. The next thing that we have in our program is the we handled this. Next thing is to handle the search function. Okay, so actually, because we are still in the clearing thing, all of these methods or all of these fields need to be cleared each and every time we hit each of these buttons. So let's just stay in that function and do the same for all of those fields. So we will need to specify those fields in here. So let's just copy and paste this below. We just need a 2 in here. So all we have to change is to change the name. So 2 dot clear. So each and every time we do submit or delete something, it will actually get the data and clear. So we do need this each and every time. So let's go back. We do need to get the data and to clear fields each and every time we update, and each and every time we delete, and each and every time we do search for a profile. Oh no, we do not need that. For a profile we do not need to clear the fields, and we do not need to get the data, because we are actually gonna do that based on the search profile that we are gonna get. So in order for us to search, we need an ID, so we are gonna get that from here, and the value that this holds is self dot id edit dot text to get the text, and we are gonna save this in a variable called id dunder, or id value. Let's call it value. And let's go back and create an SQL query for this. So we need to create a search query. So let's have a query here as a string. So select first name, last name, email, the home address, the origin, from, profiles, where person ID is okay. So where person ID is equal to this value that's been replaced, that will be replaced by this data in here, so by this ID value. And adding a comma, because the thing that this method accepts, so cursor.execute accepts an SQL query and a and the data that's been replaced in here as a tuple, so it doesn't actually accept this ID value for itself. That's why I'm adding a comma in here, and that's how you can actually have a tuple, by adding a comma or having multiple values in here. So that's actually a tuple, but this is not a tuple, this is just a string, even if we add parentheses in here. So SQL data, Google that out. That's another exercise for you, how to define tuples in Python. So let's go back. So self cursor execute, and I need to get that data. So I searched for it. I need to save it in result. So the result should be self cursor, and it should be just a single value. So let's fetch 1. Okay, and let's have a first name in this. So this has the data that we want. So let's go back, just print this in the screen to say or to see what we have. So python main.py to see. So let's give it a profiles ID. So let's have a 5. Okay, so 5 search. We didn't activate the function, so let's have the name copied. Let's go back to handle buttons. So self button search, if this was clicked, we will connect it to trigger this function. So let's go back, 5 search, it will give us the data because we did print it to the screen. So the first one is first name, last name, email address, and the origin. So let's go back and do that, save that. So we will get the data from result as a tuple. So let's go back and have a first name, hold the data as first name, second, so set text to get the text. Okay, so first name equals, actually it equals the result 0, but we do not want just to save this result in here, but we do want to give it and to fill it automatically in this field. So we do want to fill in these fields, so we need to set the text for that using this method. So self first name, the second one equals dot. So the second one, not dot result, but the result is the result or the value that we want to set it to. So set text is the method that we are going to use to set text to result 0. So we are going to repeat this process a lot, or for 1 2 3 4 5, I think, yes. So 1 2 3 4. So this is a last name, this is the email address, this is the home address, this should be the origin. So this one should be email address, the second, this one, okay, no, it's the last name, the second, this one is the email address, the second, this one is the second home address, this one is the second origin. So we set the text for each and every one to 0, but that's not correct. So this one is the one, the second, so 1 here equals to second, this is the third one, fourth one, and the last one, which is the fifth. So let's go back and see what happens. Let's go back, execute this again, and let's pick the 5, search, and there we go. Okay, tuple indexed out of range 5. We need the 4. Okay, we need 3 in here, and we need the 4th in here. That's just an index fault. Okay, so just like you have seen, this data will automatically be filled using this method right here. And if we want to check again another profile, so let's say 4 in this case, so let's 4 search, it will change automatically. We do not need to clear the fields in order to do that, because it's done it automatically using the set text. It does actually have that inside of it. And let's say to 2, let's say to 1, it doesn't exist, it will give us an error. Okay, it does execute, so non-type object is not subscriptable. What does actually happen is it pulled out that ID from the database and it didn't find it, so because we did actually delete that before in the course. So next thing we are gonna do is to have these 2 last ones done, and that we are officially done with the course. But we are gonna do that in the next lecture, inshallah.